It's time for Weekly Pulse, your heartbeat to what's trending in sports. Welcome to Weekly Pulse. I'm your host, Mackenzie Salmon. The NBA Finals and Major League Baseball playoffs are in full swing, and of course, we have a full week of football ahead of us. We are already a quarter of the way into the NFL season, and our reporter, Jory Epstein, explains why America's team is on the hot seat. On the subject of football, for those of you looking for a payout, our own Lorenzo Reyes has his locks for this week. But before we get to that, let's see how every NFL team landed in this week's power rankings. The first quarter of the NFL season is in the books. Time to see where every team ranks in this week's risers and fallers. Riser: Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Remember when everyone said Tom Brady would need a few weeks to figure things out with his new pieces? Well, 5 touchdowns to 5 different receivers against the Chargers team proves this Tampa team is on the up and up. Faller: Arizona Cardinals. This is the second straight week Arizona is a big faller. And that's what's gonna happen when you follow up a loss to Detroit with one against the Carolina Panthers. This team can still be a dark horse darling, but has a lot of issues on defense to sort out. Riser: Cleveland Browns. The Browns are 3-1 for the first time since 2001 and look downright dominant at times against Dallas. Faller: Texas teams. The Cowboys defense is a mess. Seriously, it's the worst in the league. Their only saving grace is the fact that they play in the NFC East. The Texans do not have that luxury at 0-4. Houston's season is on life support and they just let go of Bill O'Brien. Are they waving the white flag or hoping for a desperate rally under interim head coach Romeo Crennel? A lost season would be a hard pill to swallow considering they don't have a pick in the first 2 rounds next year. Faller: New England Patriots. Look, they got dealt a tough hand with Newton being out. And in all honesty, with a healthy Cam Newton, they could compete with the likes of Baltimore, Buffalo, and Kansas City in the AFC. But it is scary to think for most of the offseason, this is the team the Patriots were potentially planning on playing with. Wishing Cam a speedy and safe recovery. Faller: The Atlanta Falcons. They're now 0-4. To think they'd be 2-2 if they didn't have 2 catastrophic collapses and their only losses would have been to the 2 best teams in the NFC. Instead, their season feels all but over. At least you have the Braves.
While it wasn't the 3-0 that I've been searching for, at least we didn't drop any games. And while I'll take it, that perfect week is coming. I feel it. I'm Lorenzo Reyes, and I've been covering the NFL for 7 years now. And every week this season, I'm gonna hit you with the 3 bets I feel most confident in, my locks of the week. And let's kick things off with a team that has really started to click under their rookie head coach. The Browns are home underdogs, getting 2 points against the Colts. This should be a close game either way, but hear me out. I'll give the slight edge to Cleveland's offense, which has been dominant on the ground and ranks 4th in scoring. I think Myles Garrett makes things difficult for Phillip Rivers. Cleveland is 2-0 against the spread at home, so I'm rolling with them to win straight up 25-23. Moving on, I listed this team as one that I was crushing on just 2 weeks ago, but that's the thing about crushes. Sometimes they just break your heart. Let's just say if the Cardinals text me, I'll respond, just maybe not right away. Their offense has slowed down, Kyler Murray hasn't been as crisp, the offensive line has struggled, and third downs have been a problem. This is more of a bet I'm taking against the Jets. They're bad, like historically bad. I hate 7-point spreads, but I dislike the Jets even more. Take the Cards to win on the road and cover 26-14. And finally, I'm looking at the Chargers, and I feel like they're better than a lot of people are giving them credit for. They're on the road getting 7.5 against the Saints team that is by no means running over teams. Now, this game may be moved to Indianapolis because of the hurricane, so that bears watching. But I still think the Saints win. I just don't think they win by that much. With the Chargers to cover 28-24.
Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy understands his team's problematic pattern. Turnovers, time of possession, and defensive pressure have challenged the Cowboys during a 1-3 start. But McCarthy told us Monday he does not believe his players have an effort issue.
You know, I think you got to be real careful when you start challenging professional athletes about effort, especially from a distance. You know, we don't have an effort issue.
If we had an effort issue, McCarthy said, the game would have been over in the middle of the 3rd quarter. Our guys fought till the end. The Cowboys did score 24 unanswered points in the 4th quarter against Cleveland. Still, they came up short, 49-38 to the Browns. They're 1-3 for the first time in a decade. I asked McCarthy to further clarify. why he, as the head coach of the team, has to be careful about challenging his players.
Maybe I used the wrong words. What I was saying, I think it's you got to watch if you question their effort, from afar. I mean, I'm on the sidelines. Our issues yesterday were not effort.
McCarthy said his only disappointment as head coach is that his team keeps repeating the same mistakes. With the Giants headed to town, that's what McCarthy is focused on. I'm Jory Epstein for USA Today Sports, and that's what I'm hearing.
When Weekly Pulse returns, I have a roundtable discussion with our Major League Baseball reporters about the state of the league and their picks for this year's playoffs. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Weekly Pulse. I want to ask each of you, do you think this format is fair given that we had a shortened season? And Gabe, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say it's as good as it could be for this year. I think it makes a lot of sense because there was a really good chance that the regular season wasn't going to be fair. And in a lot of ways it wasn't. But, overall, I think it's probably unfair as sort of a long-term fix just because you look at so many teams that have won 66% of their games. The Rays were 40-20. The Dodgers were even better than that. So for it to come down to a best 2 out of 3 against teams that were barely 500, if that, is kind of inherently unfair and sort of runs counter to what baseball is, particularly when fans get invested over a 162-game season. So not a bad workaround, but probably not, hopefully not, a long-term solution.
Steve, what do you think?
I think for the way that the season schedule was set up, you needed to expand the playoffs. I think you needed to expand the playoffs. And again, with the shortened season, we had a team last year in the Washington Nationals that started 19-31 and ended up winning the World Series. That same thing happened. The Nationals had 19-31 through their first 50 games and were completely out of it. So, it didn't get them back into the playoffs, but it did expand the field to the point where teams that may have started slowly and could have had a much better season had we been 162 games and deserved to be in the playoffs, they can get in.
We do, like you guys mentioned, have 2 losing teams making the playoffs this season. Gabe, I'll start with you. Do you think that the winner of this year's World Series should have an asterisk next to their name? Why not?
Yeah, asterisk is tough. I mean, that's the word seems to provoke a lot of emotions from Babe Ruth to the 2017 Houston Astros, the Barry Bonds or whatever you want to call it. So I think that's a little harsh, but I think everybody is kind of rooting for a legitimate team to win it. I mean, just take the Dodgers. They've won 8 consecutive division titles. They've gone to 2 of the last 3 World Series, and they were a better than 600 club this year. So if the Dodgers win it, I think their track record combined with their 2020 performance, everybody will walk away feeling like, yeah, that's legit. I can live with that. Same with probably the Rays. Same with the Yankees. They've been there every year the last couple of years. Yeah, I mean, if somehow the Astros win again after all the support they received this year, let's just say there's probably not a lot of people in the central office rooting for that outcome.
And Bob, if this format proves to be exciting for fans, teams, and it increases TV ratings, could we see this as the new normal postseason format?
Well, what they want to do is a 14-team postseason. They don't want more than half the teams in baseball making it. It's a little embarrassing to have 2 sub-500 teams in the tournament this year. So what they want next year is 14 teams. The team with the best record in the league will get first-round buys. So as Gabe alluded to, the Dodgers and the Rays, would have first-round buys. And then the other division winners would actually get to pick their opponents. It sounds, gimmicky and goofy, but it makes a little sense in the fact that a team like the Cincinnati Reds, nobody wants to play them because of that pitching rotation. At least this way, teams that win the division can say, hey, I'll pick this team because their rotation is beat up or they've been struggling, things like that.
Bob, I want to know, is there every expectation that next year we will be back to the full 162-game regular season?
Yeah, that's all the plans is normal spring training, 162 games. Now, whether we have fans or not, that's another question. I don't believe we'll have fans at full capacity next year at all. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's hard to sell season tickets without knowing, but the Major League Baseball owners are kind of bracing themselves like, hey, we'll see if we have fans at the All-Star break or what have you. But it certainly won't be fans like we're used to.
Coming up after the break, our NFL columnist Mike Jones plays teacher as he hands out grades for coaches, players, and teams. We'll be right back. We're back on Weekly Pulse. We've seen how real the issue is when it comes to the incubation period for COVID. And just because you test negative one day doesn't mean you'll test negative in 3 days. Have the Titans and Gilmore's case shown those cracks in the NFL system?
Well, I mean, I think that the Titans definitely show some type of cracks. They're still getting information, so we don't know all the details, but we do know that although they said they followed the law to the letter, there was some gray area or some looseness there, and it was able to spread. 10 players, 10 officials. Was it a member of a coaching staff? Who was it? We haven't gotten the origin story yet, but there obviously was something they had to tighten up because the NFL just yesterday and Monday released really intensified restrictions, putting video monitoring in place, not allowing guys to meet outside of their facilities on their own, a lot of different, things that they're tightening up. So that means that things weren't as foolproof as they thought. And again, it's not going to be foolproof, but the spread that we saw in Tennessee's is alarming. And if there were no more cases, they would have been back up and running. We don't know what kind of handle they'll be able to get on this thing. So I think the NFL, they're doing a good job of being flexible. But again, yes, like you said, there are some cracks there because there is no way to fully ensure that this won't happen.
They've done some reshuffling of the schedule, but if this continues, they're going to run out of the bye weeks and flexibility. What are the chances the NFL adds an 18th week to the regular season?
Well, they got lucky with the Titans and the Steelers because their bye weeks were in back-to-back weeks, so they could just flip-flop the Steelers and the Ravens game, and then they could play the Titans there in Week 7. What happens with the Patriots and their upcoming opponent, whose bye weeks are nowhere near each other? That's where you get into trouble. And if this happens to another team, then I do think that there's a chance that we could see an 18th week that's almost like a makeup week. Or the only other option is that the NFL decides, okay, you know what? We're just going to have to go with some teams having a lopsided record just as long as we get the divisional games in. So there's a lot of different scenarios that they're going to be considering. Nothing will surprise me based on just the way this is going, though.
Now, switching a little bit to on the field, I want you to give us your grade. So we'll start with the top rookies. Just give us a grade and briefly why you think they deserve that grade. Joe Burrow,
I will give him I'll give him an A. This kid has been unflappable. His play has not been perfect, but the way he's handling himself, the way he's delivering it, the confidence that he's instilling in his veteran teammates, I think is great. His coach is putting a lot on him. He's throwing the ball 50, 60 times a game. That's a lot for a rookie quarterback, but he's responding favorably. And I think that they probably couldn't be more pleased with what they've seen out of their top pick so far.
Justin Herbert.
I'll give him probably a C+. He hasn't been awful, but he obviously looks like a rookie at times. Then there are other times when he's making moves on the run and making throws, and he does look very good. There hasn't been that huge drop off, so maybe a C+ is a little bit too stingy. Maybe he should be a B-, right around there. But for a kid who didn't have any game prep that week where they suddenly had to shift to him right at kickoff, I thought he did very well, and so far he's handled himself pretty decently.
Our next topic is new head coaches and how they fared in the first quarter. So, of course, we're going to start off with Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys.
Man, his grade, I guess, would probably be a D right now.
D?
This is a guy with an impressive resume who's supposed to come in here, bring his quarterback expertise, bring his offensive mind, bring his leadership skills, and help elevate the Cowboys, who have felt like they've got a Super Bowl contender type of a roster. And we have not seen this team live up to expectations. Yeah, Dak Prescott is slinging the ball all over the yard. He's racking up passing records and everything like that. but their defense is atrocious. They gave up 307 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns on 40 carries to Cleveland last week. 307 rushing yards is ridiculous. Some teams are happy if they have a third of that for a game. Their defense is not gelling yet. They have pieces in place that I don't think quite fit that system. And so it's going to take some time. And some of the game management and game play calling skills that we've seen out of McCarthy have been a little bit perplexing for a guy with his type of experience. Kind of looks like he doesn't have a firm grasp on the talent he's working with, but he didn't have a preseason. So maybe that's what we should chalk it up to. But yeah, for right now, because that team should definitely be rolling in this NFC East. Right now, they're only 1-3, so I'm giving them a D.
D. All right. I don't know how you can think of Joe Judge then. This is the next one. How do you feel about Joe Judge?
I mean, not good for him either. Probably in similar territory. I will give him this, that Saquon Barkley is hurt. Having Saquon Barkley healthy would really ease some pressure on Daniel Jones, but Daniel Jones is not playing well. They don't have a whole lot that they're working with right there. So it's hard to give him, anything. You hate to say complete F, but right now they are winless right now, and there haven't been a lot of positives.
Yeah. All right. How about Matt Rule in the Panthers?
I will give him a C+, B- type of grade. They've competed. They've gone on the road, long road trips, and they've looked like a professional outfit. Last week, we saw them beat the Cardinals. The Cardinals had started off really hot and impressive, and we thought that they were going to be something. Matt Rule, using his experience and knowledge of Cliff Kingsbury from their college days with Rule at Baylor and Kingsbury at Texas Tech, Rule gets the win, and they did it without Christian McCaffrey. Teddy Bridgewater looks really impressive. So, yeah, I'll chalk that up to a B for Matt Rule.
All right, Kevin Stefanski with the Browns.
I will give him B as well, because they started off pretty shaky, but what we've seen out of them the last couple weeks, now also take it with a grain of salt who they're playing. They played Washington, they played Dallas. As we know, the NFC East is trash, but the explosiveness, the creativity, the game plan that he's got for this offense, not putting too much on Baker Mayfield, getting these guys to play hard. I'm impressed with what I see from a guy who didn't have an off-season program with his team. He didn't have a preseason. He's never been a head coach on any level. So this is all new to him, but we're seeing really strong leadership out of him.
All right, now a team that you're very close with, Ron Rivera. How do you feel about him?
You have to give him huge grade and respect for what he's doing. You look at his roster as well. Yeah. It doesn't have a lot of talent except for on that defensive front there. Right now, I will give him a C, though, because of his handling of Dwayne Haskins, who he benched today. Awful decision, I think. You were brought in here to develop this kid, give him some time. The fact that just last week, Ron Rivera one day said, hey, I still see him as a rookie. He's only played in 10 games. He needs more time. Then the next day he said that locker room deserves better out of their quarterback. I guess he'd watched film and saw some things and heard from players. But then at the end of the week, he was really praising Haskins. He said he's got to show growth. Haskins played better on Sunday, and now he's benched. So a little bit of indecisiveness there, maybe a little bit impatience. If you wanted to be in a win-now mode, I kind of don't understand why they didn't put more around Haskins. They got rid of guys like Josh Norman and Adrian Peterson, veterans who could have helped. They've got some young pieces, but they're not ready to win yet. And now they're going to Kyle Allen, who last year in his 7 games or 12 games for Ron Rivera through 16 touchdown passes and 17 interceptions, I think it was. Not a world beater. So we'll see where this goes. I'm waiting to see, but right now it looks like typical Washington, and so it's hard to have much confidence and praise for some of the decisions that we've seen.
Don't go anywhere. When Weekly Pulse returns, we chat with Paul Myerberg about the chaos that is college football right now. It's time for more Weekly Pulse. We're a month into the season, and we're still waiting for the Big Ten and Pac-12 to begin play. And with that said, I want to know which programs and players have really stuck out to you as getting off to a hot start.
Yeah, I know this is going to be really surprising, but Clemson looks really good. Alabama's probably pretty good. I mean, that's just it's guesswork. I think one of the bigger surprises is Mac Jones, who's a QB at Alabama. You know, if you go back a year when he replaced Tua Tagovailoa, there was a sense that he was like a caretaker, like, oh, he'll like carry the pail of water with these 5 stars and then sit the bench in the future. And then Alabama brought in a 5-star and Bryce Young, the top QB prospect in the country, and it kind of heightened the idea that thanks, Mac, but now go back to holding a clipboard. And through 2 games, he's been dynamic. So he's in the Heisman Trophy mix. Florida and their quarterback, Kyle Trask, and their tight end, Kyle Pitts, they've been in a really amazing offense, and that's been a huge development for the Gators. Like you would think, the Big Ten hasn't played yet.
Yeah.
And because of that fact, the SEC has dominated the airwaves. So if you talk college football right now on October 7th or 8th, it's SEC. We'll see in 2 weeks if that changes. It might when the Big Ten returns, but we won't know until we see Ohio State, Penn State, and a few others.
You mentioned one guy at the top of your Heisman race. Who are the other guys you're looking at that you think are going to be at the top of that by the end of the season?
Trevor Lawrence is going to be there. Trevor Lawrence is he's quite good. Like, I don't know, there's really nothing left to say about Trevor Lawrence. He's really good, and he's probably better than he's ever been. So, you know, I would probably give him the Heisman now, as long as he, you know, knock the wood, nothing bad happens to him. He's probably going to win the Heisman. But yeah, you know, you never want to say anything about, hey, this guy's going to win. It's October. There's 2 months to go. But if everything goes according to plan, barring injury, this is Trevor Lawrence's Heisman to lose.
We've seen Notre Dame and others have to deal with outbreaks, and yet they've been ready to play this weekend. Is this season ever going to stabilize, in your opinion, or do you expect continued chaos?
Yeah, I mean, well, look, like, chaos is the default mode for college football anyway.
Exactly.
This is even more chaotic than usual. We've got to get used to it. Like, you go and get your guacamole, you put a mask on. You're used to this. This is like your life now. You know what I mean? Like, you're home all the time. This is your life. Welcome. This is college football now. Like, you can schedule, like, hey, Steve, you want to come over and watch Notre Dame at 7:30 on Saturday? Steve could be like, yeah, but I'll check in with you at 5. Like, just to see if they're playing. College football is in get me to the finish line mode. And the finish line is January 11th in Miami for the national championship. Just get there. Every game is played just to get there. Like, all the cramps and the crying and the tears and the sweat that occurs on the way is just part of the price.
Obviously, there's time for flexibility earlier in the season, but what's your expectation when we get closer to the college football playoffs? Is there any chance of a playoff bubble, you think?
You know, that's a financial investment and a time investment that is going to be really difficult to pull off and also to justify. We still like to think that we inhabit this world where they're amateurs and they have a chemistry exam on Tuesday. So that's going to be difficult to manage and kind of manifest into reality. But other sports have shown if you can bubble and protect your guys, you got a better chance of pulling it off. The good news is that at that point of the year, like from mid-December on, like a school like Ohio State or whatever, or any school, they'll be one of the few students on campus because of winter break. So you'll have that potential, even if schools are in session, to give yourself like a 2-week quarantine, or to quarantine yourself and then quarantine yourself again when you get to a site. So I'm not sure if it's mandatory, but certainly, like any league, you would look into it and want to protect your players and coaches, whomever, as best as you can.
That does it for this week's episode of Weekly Pulse. By this time next week, an NBA champion will be crowned. We'll be gearing up for the World Series, and the NFC East will still be terrible. Until then, I'm Mackenzie Salmon. Thank you for watching Weekly Pulse. Hey sports fans, if you want to see more videos like this, check out some of our other ones right here. And if you like what you see, make sure to hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more from USA Today Sports.